Hello, everyone. Happy Friday. I have some goodies to show you guys, some new bundles. Well, not new bundles, but repurposed bundles, I guess we'll call them. Repackaged, refined bundles, we'll say that. Tonight we're going to be doing a epoxy 101 live. So for anybody who is new to epoxy or just a beginner in general, let me go here. There we go. Okay. Yay! I'm so excited. So be sure when you hop on to say hello, pop in and say hey. Oh, I did mean to post that in my Facebook group. I forgot. Let me do that real quick. I always forget to do this. I meant to do it right before, but I literally was rushing to eat dinner. I feel like that's always my thing. Gosh, now everything's catching up. Okay, live on YouTube. Oops. Okay. I'm back. Oh, let me turn this on too. I'm back. So we are going to do some... Oh, let me go get my questions too. Let me go do that. While we're waiting for my epoxy to warm up, let me go get my question sheet for my FAQ. Oh, and I'll show you guys, oops, the newly bundled items. Be right back. BRB. Okay. All right. Well, hi, everybody. Welcome. Okay, so I want to start by showing you guys some of the newer bundles that I just put together. They're not brand new items, but I've repurposed them, and I think a lot of people really haven't seen some of the things that I do have on my website. So this was the perfect time for me to work on clearing inventory, but also bundle things a little bit differently. So let me show you that stuff. Okay, so the first bundle that I have, and let me open this because this has my pricing on it, because gotta plan everything, you know? Gotta plan all the things. Okay. Excuse me. Of course I'm yawning. Shocker. I did have to get up early this morning and I did not sleep great. But the first bundle is the Neon Explosion bundle. So this has all of the 10x10 neon UV DTF sheets. So this is a 7-sheet bundle, okay? So that bundle comes with the neon leopard hearts, okay? You also get the checkered pattern with the neon leopard lightning bolts. You get a full sheet of the neon leopard zebra print. You get the neon stars. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, we're back. So you get the neon ombre stripes. These are so cute. And then you get the zebra print and leopard print neon combo. Okay? Absolutely obsessed. Absolutely obsessed. So this bundle, if you bought each of the sheets, because these are all sold separately on my website, if you bought them all individually, it would cost you $49. So for this weekend only, I am doing this entire bundle of UV DTF for $30, okay? So you can literally get probably 12 cups out of something like this, probably more, if I'm really thinking about it. Like this sheet alone, you could do probably 4 cups. Like you could do a lot with this bundle alone. Getting you ready for summer ideas, perfect bundle to grab so you are prepared for all of the bright colors for summertime. So just saying, okay? All right, so that is the Neon Explosion bundle. Then we have, this is what I call the Magical Storm bundle. Don't judge my names for my bundles. I had to come up with them kind of quickly. Okay, so the Neon Storm bundle has both vinyl and UV DTF. So you get the 3 gaudy snowflake or glamorous snowflake sheets. So you get the one that's gold, you get the pink, and you get the purple. But then you also get 3 vinyl sheets. So you get this pink iridescent. You get this sheet. I forget what this one was called on my website. And then you also get one of the Dreamscape sheets. So super cute. So you get 3 vinyls and you get 3 UV DTF, which is at minimum 3 cups, maybe even more, especially because there's so many decals on this sheet. And this would normally cost you $36 if you bought it separately. For this weekend, only beginning today, it's only going to cost you $19. So perfect opportunity to try something new, do something different. That is the Magical Storm bundle. Hi, Joyce. Okay, we are next up with the, I'm calling this the Lover's Quarrel bundle. So this is a combination of some of my Valentine prints, my Gothic Valentine prints, with some of the self-love items as well. So this is a strict UV DTF sheet. Okay, so bundle, so I'll show you everything that's in there. So you get this Gothic romance sheet, which has all of these beautiful dark romance aesthetic pieces. Perfect. You also get the other dark romance sheet. This has some masquerade masks, some mirrors, roses, a locket or a potion bottle. Then you get the Floral Fantasy bundle, or the Floral Fantasy sheet. So this very much gives like Mystical Moon vibes for me. Love it. And then you get one of the self-love decal sheets. So these are all self-love decals. Super cute. I think there's a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's like 12 decals on here. 12 decals. So that's literally 12 cups right there. And then you get the Valentine's saying decal sheet as well. So there are some very specific Valentine ones like Be Mine, Lover, but you also get ones like this one that say like Keep Shining, Pretty, Powerful, and Persistent, and other ones that definitely can be used for not just Valentine vibes, if that makes sense. So this is 5 sheets of UV DTF, okay? And this bundle for this weekend only is $25, okay? So this one gives you just UV DTF, okay? All right, moving on to, this is the Teacher's Pet bundle, okay? So this one you get 3 UV DTF wraps and then you get 2 vinyl sheets, okay? So the first vinyl sheet you get is the Transparent Teach vinyl. This one is absolutely adorable, designed by me. Then you get this opaque vinyl with some of those same elements, but a little bit in a different format. Okay, and then for the UV DTF, you get this Teach Them, Love Them, Watch Them Grow teacher wrap. You also get this teacher and floral wrap. And then finally, you get an element sheet that has some of the decals that are on both prints so that you could kind of combo those together and of course create your own teacher related tumbler, especially with Teacher Appreciation Week coming up in May. There are so many good things that you can do with this bundle. So the Teacher's Pet bundle is $17. Again, this is just for the weekend only and while supplies last. So I have a limited quantity of all of the bundles. So if you see something you love, snag it. Don't wait, because I can't promise you that it will be here and or will it still be bundled or packaged the way that I have it after Sunday evening, okay? Okay, and then the final bundle I have, this is called my Bees and Butterflies bundle. This one has three vinyl sheets and 3 UV DTF, okay? So I'll start with the vinyl. So first you get the small scale bee and purple pink florals. Okay, you get a large print bee and purple floral. This one I love. I think this would be so cute to do that outline technique with. I'll have to try that out. Then you get the butterfly and florals 10 or 12 by 12 sheet. And then this comes with 3 UV DTF. So you get a butterfly and floral decal sheet. You get the Let It Be decal sheet. So that's 4 decals right there. That could be literally Tumblr statements. And then you get the Change Can Be Beautiful butterfly decal, single decal. Okay. So that bundle is normally $36, and for this weekend only, it is $19. So I promise you, there are some fantastic deals. I made sure also to go on the website and be sure that all of the bundles were on the front page so that it would be easy for you guys to find as well. So I encourage you to go check those out if you're looking to shop this weekend, because these are deals that I will not keep in stock. You know, I'm going to do the sale this weekend, see how it goes, this rebundling, and then everything goes back to normal price for Monday. Okay, let me set these aside just so that they're not in my way while I do other things. Okay, all right, well, 'tis the time where we get to chat. I do have a cup that I am going to epoxy, probably up here. Normally I'd epoxy it over there, but I already have a couple things going. There was a total of 5 bundles. So I have a Neon Explosion, which is 7 neon UV DTF sheets. The Magical Storm bundle has 3 Glamorous Snowflake sheets, UV DTF, and then 3 12 by 12 vinyl sheets. And I think you hopped on when I showed the Lover's Coral bundle. So the total of 5 bundle deals on the website for this weekend only. Okay? All right. So tonight we're going to be talking about epoxy, okay? I didn't get a chance to really like post that I was going live on YouTube. I posted it on Instagram and I posted it in my Facebook group, but I did not get a chance to like be all up in my social media. This is why it's so important for me to, what do you call it? Batch content and schedule things, because some weeks, like, I'm telling you, the time just flies. Like, I'm so caught up in everything that's happening that I literally don't have time to do anything else except for whatever I'm doing for my 9 to 5, you know? But I am open to any and all questions. Again, I am going to epoxy a cup tonight as well to kind of give you guys that kind of like view for anybody who's hopping on or watching this on the replay and is brand new to epoxy and like literally is just nervous to get started. Like, I totally understand that. I was once upon a time in your shoes, and I definitely did not do things the safest way. So I'm always here to teach what is the best, what is the safest way, what's best practice when it comes to getting into using any sort of resin or epoxy, because again, when epoxy is not cured, it is toxic, and I would hate for anybody to get sick because they're not using their epoxy properly or educated on best practices when it comes to epoxy. So the comments are open if you have any questions, any question whatsoever with regards to using epoxy, issues that you've had with your epoxy, hi Ebony Boo, or anything epoxy related. I will do my absolute best to answer any and all of those questions. I did come up with a list of questions that I'm most frequently asked when I'm talking about epoxy. For those of you who haven't seen my recent series over on Instagram and TikTok, if you're over there as well, I've been doing a beginner epoxy series, and really it's like literally going back to the basics. And when I say the basics, I don't mean like this is like brand new information, or because I think that sometimes even the advanced epoxy users don't necessarily know some of this information, but it's important information, and why I always say it's so important to do research before you start anything, to just make sure you understand like what you're getting into, like what safety precautions you need to take, what you need to think about when you are bringing something like epoxy, which is toxic in its basic form, into your home environment. You know, so this is more of an opportunity to kind of educate people and maybe, you know, encourage them to go do some research themselves as well. Because, you know, epoxy is a chemical reaction. It's not, you know, it's not like putting oil and vinegar together so that you can get a really great vinaigrette, right? You know, this is something that really can cause health concerns for some people who do have allergic reactions to those kinds of chemicals and things. So, of course, comment section is open. Anybody who has questions, this is a judgment-free zone. No question is a silly question. Please ask any and all questions with regards to making tumblers, using resin or epoxy, different formulas of epoxy, and I will give you my experience if I have any with some of those other formulas. But I am here to share my knowledge with all of you and what it's like to epoxy. Considering I've been doing this, I can't even believe it. It will be 6 years in August. So it's been a really long time. And I've definitely made a lot of mistakes when I first started, and have learned so much as I have continued my journey. Again, research is so important, and I will be the first one to tell you that I did not do proper research before I started to epoxy cups. I was like, this is easy, I can do this. And sure, yeah, but like, I also was exposing my family in our dining room to toxic epoxy fumes because I had no idea that I needed to be in a place that had, you know, a window or some form of ventilation. Like, I was doing this on a side table next to the dining room table. So again, I made so many mistakes when I first started, and I know that sometimes doing something new can be so scary, and I just jumped in with both feet like I could swim in the deep end, and I hadn't even taken lessons. But 6 years later, I am still here. So I did learn some things along the way, and definitely changed my practices to make sure that I was doing things in best practice for the health of myself, but also for the health of my family. So I say all that to say, I do have a list of questions that I will start with, but anything that comes up, I will gladly answer as well. While I'm waiting for my other epoxy warm, it's so cold in New York. Oh my gosh. I don't know how the weather is where everybody else is, but it is so cold. And again, it could be colder, and it was colder last week, so technically this is warmer. But I hate this weather when I'm in my garage, because I'm in the garage. Like, there's no warmth. I have one space heater. I do have a kerosene heater, which I typically use, but I'm out of kerosene. So I've just been raw dogging with my small space heater in this like huge garage. Like, sheesh. 90? I could only wish that I had 90-degree weather. We get 90-degree weather in maybe August. That's like it here in New York. So gotta love that. Okay, so one question I get a lot, which is like the really like basic, right? It's so cold, and I'm so tired of the snow. Like, if the snow could just hurry up and melt, I would be so grateful. If it wants to chill and stick on the grass, I'm for it. But the edge of my driveway, the end of my driveway, I'm so frustrated with all the ice and snow that's just collected there because of the plows coming through. Like, I'm over it. I'm so over it. So over it. Okay. So one of the number one questions that I get, which is actually kind of surprising, but it's one I got a lot, and it's actually one, the question I covered in the very first video that I did, is what is epoxy? I think there's a little bit of a misconception with what epoxy is and how it works, but epoxy is a two-part system that when mixed together correctly creates a chemical reaction. So the chemical reaction of part A, which is the resin, and part B, which is your hardener, that is what creates the chemical reaction to allow that cup to harden and dry over time. A lot of people think that just because their space is warm, that is what's making the epoxy cure, and that's not true. That is speeding up that chemical reaction, but that is not what is allowing the epoxy to cure. That's just helping to fuel that chemical reaction to get it to cure and be dry to the touch slightly quicker, okay? So, you know, it's very common for people to just assume that like, oh, I just have to put it in a warm space, especially when we're looking at things like the resin or tumbler curing machine, the Wanvi, which was out forever ago. Those kinds of things really, I think, have led a lot of people to think that heat is really the only way to cure a tumbler, and that you have to have a super warm space to get your tumblers secure, but that's not true. It's actually all based on a chemical reaction. Okay. Another question that I get that I'm always happy to answer is, do I need special gloves or safety equipment? The answer to that question is yes, 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 yes. You don't necessarily need special safety equipment, but you do need the proper personal protective equipment to ensure that you're keeping the health of yourself safe and the health of those that are in your family or in your space and in your domain of where you're epoxying safe as well. First things first, like hands down, if you don't use any other personal protective equipment, please, 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 please use gloves. Use gloves. Nitrile works best. You can use vinyl. I personally hate vinyl gloves. I hate the way they feel. So that's a little bit of a personal preference, but I have used those in a pinch. But I do feel that epoxy leaches through them a little bit, like does nitrile. But I don't actually have proof of that. That's just from my own personal experience. I always get nitrile gloves. So if you're not going to listen to anything else I say and you're just getting into epoxy, please use gloves. At minimum, please use gloves. Because epoxy, again, in its base forms, in the part A and part B, if that gets on your skin, that's a toxic chemical that's getting on your skin. And if you are someone that's sensitive or not even sensitive, there are lots of makers who have been creating tumblers for years and years and years and later develop allergies to epoxy. So you can develop an allergy to epoxy at any level. That could be something as minimal as a skin reaction. That can be something to do with your eyes, where your eyes swell up. I know makers that, you know, have to make sure that they're wearing a full face respirator versus a half mask and goggles because it affects their skin that badly. And people who are allergic to the point where when exposed to those chemicals can have an anaphylactic reaction. So it's so, so, so important that you are protecting yourself with gloves to protect your skin. You're protecting your respiratory system because that's typically what shows up for reactions most when it comes to epoxy. And nobody wants to say that epoxy is the thing that did them in. That is for sure. Okay? Yes, it very quickly can absorb into your skin and directly into your bloodstream. So please use gloves. There has been so many times that I have seen people on TikTok, and I know they don't know what they don't know. But I sit there like this when I see people like epoxying their cups with no gloves. I remember the very first videos I used to watch when I was just getting into like, ooh, this is something I think I want to do, you know, just as like a side thing, you know, while I'm not working during COVID. And I remember watching videos where like people just were not using gloves. And although I had no real knowledge of what epoxy was, how it worked, how I would use it, seeing people like use it without gloves was like, it was icky to me because I'm a sensory person. I don't like having things like that on my skin, you know? So like if even if I'm mixing like a meatloaf like to make upstairs, like for dinner, like I will use gloves. I know that is so dramatic, but like I don't like that kind of texture and stuff on my hands. But I remember seeing people making YouTube videos not using gloves, right? Not being educated. Again, we can't fault them for not knowing what they know, but Best practice for sure to keep yourself healthy and safe, minimum gloves. The other thing you should ensure you have is some sort of respirator mask, okay? So I have a half respirator mask because I wear glasses, so it's very difficult for me to wear a full mask, but I actually have purchased a full mask, which will be here not too long, I think next week. There was a little bit on back order, which I thought was interesting. Because I know that I'm just due for a new mask. I've changed the filters on this one so many times. And I'm like, I probably need to just move on to a new mask. I have 2 half masks that I like switch in between. But having some form of respirator, and I don't mean like the mask that we were all wearing during COVID. I don't mean an N95, like I mean a high quality respirator. So something that people who are in construction use for when they are painting, when they are using harsh chemicals insides of homes, when they're building. Those are the things that you want to make sure that you are wearing on your face. So I do believe that I have the original one that I purchased forever ago in my Amazon storefront for anybody who's just like, what does this even look like? And when I go to mix epoxy for the cup we're going to epoxy tonight at the end, I will also show you what that looks like. But it's so important that at minimum that you're wearing gloves and you're wearing some sort of respirator, okay? Again, that's going to protect the inside of your body from those chemicals. Because again, epoxy is still toxic until it's fully cured, okay? Not even just until it's dried, until it's fully cured. Good evening. Okay. And then I always get a lot of questions on like, do I need like a full hazmat suit? No, you don't necessarily need a full hazmat suit. You totally can wear a full hazmat suit. I typically wear what I call my epoxy clothes, meaning they're clothes that I've already spilled drops of epoxy on, you know, just like my old crap clothes. So I typically will wear something like that. And if I don't, like tonight, I'm going to epoxy in these clothes right here. I do have an apron that I'll put on, but as soon as I'm done with tonight, I will strip out here in the garage and these go directly in the washer, just so that any fumes that may be attached to my clothes are not then going to transfer to me because I'm wearing them, or transfer to my family because I'm walking into the house. Thankfully, which is really nice, is that my laundry room is literally, I'm in the garage. When I open the garage door to inside the house, the laundry room is the first door. So I don't have to go very far. But just keeping in mind that even if you don't smell the epoxy, so even if you have an epoxy that is low order or you don't have a smell to the epoxy, that does not mean it's not toxic. Very much so. We all know that there are plenty of silent killers that they call them. Think about carbon monoxide, right? You can't smell carbon monoxide, right? You don't necessarily know you're being exposed to it until you have the symptoms. So just because you can't smell it doesn't mean you shouldn't be wearing a respirator. And just because you can't smell it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be wearing your personal protective equipment at all times. Okay, I'm going to pause for a second because I feel like I've just been rambling for 1,000 minutes. And say hey to everybody in case I missed anybody. Hi, Kat. I don't think I said hello to you. How are you? Aw, thanks, Ebony Boo. Yes, still toxic. Oh, man. I'm so happy it's Friday today, guys. Oh, my gosh. You have no idea. It was a week, and it wasn't even like a terrible week, but for those of you in the comments that have kids, you understand what it's like to go from having a week off, right? Kids are home, your routine's a little bit different, to then going back to working with youth the week after break is over. It's like a serious whirlwind. It always puts me in a whole spiral, and I literally don't know what up from down is. But I just keep saying, girl, you survived it. Thank the Lord. All right, let's see what other questions I typically get. I'm going to like bop around a little bit to answer, because I have 20 questions here, but I don't expect to go over 20 questions. But obviously, if there's other questions, drop them in the comments. Let's see. We talked about safety equipment. What is a good question to ask? Okay, can I color epoxy, and what types of pigments are safe? Yes, you can color epoxy. You can use things like alcohol ink. You can use things like pigment paste. There are specific items out there that are epoxy pigments. Illuminite sells, I think, a lot of colors, but I most know them for the black and white pigment paste that they have for epoxy. You can definitely buy different colorants. You can use things like micas. You can use acrylic paint. I don't know if I said that. If you really wanted to, you could even use food coloring, but obviously you're not going to get a very dense color with food coloring. But anything you can think of to tint your epoxy, you can. You could put glitter in your epoxy and do what I call the cheat method glitter, where you don't even glitter the cup. You just put the glitter in the epoxy and you apply the epoxy to the cup, and now you got a glittered cup, right? So yes, you can color your epoxy with a lot of different things. The easiest thing to get for sure is just acrylic paint. Any acrylic paint, you can add a couple drops to your epoxy after you've thoroughly mixed it, and you can use that to tint the epoxy to the color that you need it to be. Okay? Okay, so I answered coloring epoxy. Do I need a heat gun or torch for every project? Yes and no. Okay, so I'm going to talk about this in two forms. Okay, so you do typically need some form of heat element that's going to eliminate bubbles in your epoxy, because even if you are to mix your epoxy at a snail's pace to get it to be fully mixed, which probably would take you upwards of 30 minutes if you're mixing it that slow, you are typically still going to have micro bubbles that even you can't necessarily see. And when you're applying that, right, you're introducing the epoxy to air as you're spreading it onto or pouring it into a mold. So you do need to make sure that you have something to pop those bubbles. And that's just so that you don't end up with things like micro bubbles. And I wish I had a cup that like had micro bubbles on it, but I don't think I have anything old or new that I could show you in front of me. But essentially what micro bubbles look like, it's a bunch of trapped air under your layer of epoxy, and it will look cloudy, so it'll almost look like it's not fully clear, and that typically is micro bubbles. So those are teeny tiny bubbles of just trapped air that didn't release to the surface, and it cured or hardened before being able to release those bubbles out of the layer. Did you have a question?
Nope.
Oh, you're just here to chill? So now, if I was doing a tumbler like this, I would use either a kitchen torch, which is what I started with, or I would use something like a propane torch, which is what I currently have. Okay, so those are the two things that I would say to use. Your butane and your propane torches are going to pop more bubbles. Can you use a heat gun? Yes, but I will tell you, it's not going to eliminate all of the bubbles in your epoxy. Usually the top layer it can kind of get, but anything that's a little bit deeper, you're not really going to penetrate through. That is what I started with, and I noticed that I still had micro bubbles. And that's just because the heat is really just going to make the epoxy thinner and kind of make sometimes your epoxy slop off with that kind of high heat, versus the butane or the propane. Those chemicals really help pop the bubbles and release those to the surface better, if that makes sense. So where I wouldn't use a torch, or where I wouldn't use a kitchen torch, is in a mold. Okay, so because silicone molds are so malleable and very easy to damage in high heat, you wouldn't want to put something like a propane torch on that, because you're potentially going to damage your mold and only be able to use it potentially that one time, or it won't even be able to, you know, use it after you probably won't even be able to demold if you apply too much of that heat, because that will melt your silicone molds. So I recommend using like a barbecue lighter to pop your bubbles, or just using a simple alcohol spray, spraying the top, letting that dissipate before you go with your barbecue lighter. This just alone will help get those bubbles on the top to pop before you need to really go in with your barbecue lighter. Do you have a question, or are you really just standing here? Oh, thanks for watching me. Wow, it's really so clear on that phone. I'm gonna need to get one of these just for filming. Wow, that looks great. That almost looks better than my phone. It looks a little clearer, I feel like. Am I crazy? I don't know, maybe. Yes, of course it's my favorite helper. Parker, Cameron was out here too just a second ago.
It's just my quality.
Oh.
Or
Sorry.
Screen protector.
I have a screen protector though too.
Yeah, but like, which kind of just happens.
Oh. Oh, so you're just trying to tell me that mine's old?
No.
Oh,
no,
okay.
no,
I see how you feel.
no.
I understand. Sure.
I'm just saying that.
Sure.
It's just a little rusty.
Okay. Okay. Now, as far as do you need it for every project, any project that you're going to be using epoxy for, I would recommend using either a barbecue lighter, alcohol, or some sort of torch. Because again, you are most likely introducing air either when you're mixing or when you're applying your epoxy, so it doesn't hurt to add a few swipes of that torch on your cup just to make sure that any bubbles or any trapped air is released, so that you don't let it cure dry and then find out later that there was a spot that there was a bunch of micro bubbles. Because man, that's a sad day when you are working on a cup so hard and then you pull it off the turner and realize you forgot to torch. Ask me how I know. Let me tell you, I've done that a few times, as well as leaving tape on the rim of a cup and not taking it off until the cup is completely dry. So I have some horror stories. Okay, let's see. What happens if I mix the resin and hardener wrong? So anytime you have an ill-measured amount of your part A and part B, you are typically going to run into a hot mess express. Now, typically, for a lot of epoxies, there is a slight room for error by a couple milliliters or so. So in the event that, let's say that you were trying to pour 30 mLs of epoxy, you accidentally poured 16 mLs of part A and only 15 mLs of part B and mix those together, 9 times out of 10 that will still cure. There is a slight room for error in most epoxies, but if that ratio is too different, so let's say I poured 20 mLs and then I only poured 10 mLs of the hardener, I'm gonna end up with a hot sticky mess. I'm gonna end up with a mixing issue, right? I'm gonna mix that and then apply that to my cup, and it's not going to cure. So you're gonna end up with a very sticky and tacky cup. So it's so important that you are pouring the proper amounts for the total amount that you want to mix, and not over pouring one and under pouring another to make it even, okay? Because it's not like cooking. It's definitely not like baking, because I'm not a baker, and I'm the first one to tell you that if you mess up over adding something or under adding something, baking is the first way that you'll be able to tell that it's a mess. It's just like epoxy, right? It's not like cooking where you can just throw a little bit of something in there. You know, you're trying something new, you do a little extra garlic, or you do a little less salt and add a little bit more pepper and it still tastes great. It's like baking where you accidentally added baking soda instead of baking powder and you have a hot mess. Okay? So don't do it. Don't do it. In the event that you have an improperly either mixed batch of epoxy or a situation where the ratio was incorrect, so either you didn't mix long enough, right, which is an undermixed batch of epoxy, or you have incorrect ratios and you've mixed and applied that, and you realize, let's say the next day, that it didn't work. You can, and I say this very lightly, my tried and true is that in the event that you ever run into something like this, I will tell you that the safest way to handle a cup, safest way so that you are not exposing yourself or a potential customer to uncured toxic epoxy, is to just strip the cup. I know that's not like what people like to hear, but for me, I would rather start over knowing that I might have to do additional steps to get this cup ready for this customer, but that I'm not exposing the customer to uncured toxic epoxy, then try and wipe it off, which a lot of people will say you can wipe it off with alcohol, acetone, or baby wipes until it's completely dry, or so you're that base layer, and then add a coat of epoxy on top. You can do that, but I'm going to tell you that in my honest opinion, okay, and the safest way to ensure that you're not exposing yourself or a customer to uncured epoxy is to just strip the cup and start over, okay? Because nobody wants to be sued over their work. And definitely nobody deserves to be exposed to uncured epoxy, right? Yourself or your customers. I just feel like it's a recipe for disaster. So I would much rather strip a cup than try and wipe it off and salvage it if I can avoid it at all costs, which I typically do. I would rather tell a customer that their cup is going to be late than be like, oh, I messed up, and try and wipe it off and try and start again. Okay. Can you store leftover epoxy? No. You cannot store leftover epoxy when it is fully mixed, okay? So if you mix a batch of epoxy, let's say you've mixed 60 mLs of epoxy, and then you have only used 30 on your cup and you've got 30 mLs left, you cannot save that for another cup. Now, if you have a cup ready to go, right, you got another cup on a turner ready to go, of course, you can go ahead and apply that to another cup, okay? You don't have to do 1 cup of epoxy for each cup. You can epoxy multiple cups at the same time, but you can't save that cup for 2 days or save that batch of epoxy that's already mixed for 2 days and expect you to be able to epoxy a cup, you know, tomorrow after you've glittered. Okay. There is a such thing called a pot life for epoxy. Typically your vendor will have that information in the MSDS form, which will give you more information about the products, right, that are within the epoxy and hardener. It will also give you basic safety precautions and information that you need to know in the event that you're exposed to those toxins. But typically for most fast cure epoxies, and this is just a general blanket, most fast cure epoxies, your pot life is anywhere between 20, maybe 25, 30 minutes, usually no longer than that before your epoxy really starts to harden, okay? And if your space is a little bit warmer, it can have less time for you to really be able to apply that. For something like an artist cure, you'll get a little bit longer, closer to 30 and 45 minutes before it is too thick to be able to work with. But that is all based on different brands. Some brands harden quicker. So if you're using anything like, what do they call that? What's that newer, like a turbo set? I think CCDIY has one, and there's a lightning cure epoxy. Like the pot life for that, we're talking, you have 10 minutes tops to get that epoxy applied, okay? Because that's like a crack version of a fast cure, okay? So you have literally no time to basically mix and use that epoxy. But a typical general fast cure and a general artist cure have a bit more pot life, right? A bit more time that you can be mixing and then applying without feeling you need to rush, okay? Hello, how are you? Yes, I agree, Joyce. I would much rather like just redo it and tell the customer, apologize that like I messed up and it's going to take me a couple extra days than to potentially send a customer a cup that potentially has uncured epoxy somewhere on it in some layer, you know? Yes. Yes. Harden like 45 minutes. And your artist cures will have a longer time. You know, sometimes artist cures, I mean, I'm even thinking about the original formula Phil and Sister Supply Shop, because that would be what I would use to do like an epoxy drip. And sometimes that would take like an hour and 10 minutes before it would even like really set up the way I needed it to do like a slow drip. So it all also has to do with your environment. A warmer environment, again, is going to speed up. You did? Did you get it on the sale? Or did you buy it after the sale? Flint Sister Supply Shop's having, I think, is it a 35% off sale for her birthday this weekend through the 4th, I believe. So you guys can save some money if anyone's looking into getting some epoxy or rhinestones or vinyl or UV-TTF. She's got a lot of stuff over there. What was I saying? What were we talking about? Epoxy? Oh, you got the 25% off sale. That was what, last weekend, I think? I lost where I was, but if I missed something, let me know. I am going to get ready to mix epoxy because I'm sure my epoxy is probably now cooling. So something I will say is that Flint Sister Supply Shop, that's the epoxy that I will die on a hill for. My favorite epoxy, hands down. And I understand, you know, different epoxies for different people, and I totally understand. For me in New York, This has been fantastic in both warm climates and cold climates. The old epoxy, the original formula, I should say, that formula was very thick, so it was very important to heat up or warm up part A and part B in like a hot water bath or a baby bottle warmer or something to just get it warm so it was easier to mix. But now with the new formula, it is so much thinner, and literally I don't technically have to heat it up. I only do when I know it's going to be super cold out here, to like give it a little bit of a jump start to start that chemical reaction. But it is so easy to use, like, so I like feel no hand cramps. It's not so thick that it's like honey, like it's so thin, it's so good. Yes, look, humidity. Wait, no, it's dry heat out there. But I know people that use it in Florida where there's a lot of humidity and they don't have issues with that epoxy. And again, everybody has a different epoxy that works for them in different climates and different, you know, ways that they mix and apply their epoxy. So, you know, everybody has to kind of like try things to decide what is the best epoxy for them. But I'm always going to tell you what I use. So that, you know, you know, it works for me, especially if you're in a similar climate to what I live in here in New York. I was talking about the epoxy. What else was I saying? Okay, I'm going to answer one more question and then we're going to go epoxy. Well, then I'm going to epoxy. And I'm going to epoxy over here so you guys can see it. And I'll give you the YouTube view. I did. I didn't try a whole lot of epoxies. But I definitely tried some ones that weren't for me. There's plenty of ones that I've never tried and I've never wanted to because I found something that works, and I don't know about y'all, but I'm a if it ain't broke, don't fix it kind of girl. So you ain't gonna catch me trying to go find something else that works because what I got works. I started with Alumilite, their original formula, which if anybody remembers was very stinky. I started with that. And it was fine. I didn't have any issues with it other than the smell. But again, I was so new to epoxy when I first started using Alumilite that I just thought that this was how all epoxies were. Then from that, I moved on to DIY epoxy when they were a company. This is going back a while ago. And I didn't hate that epoxy. And that was the first time I was actually introduced to a facet. That was when facets were just coming out. And I had some issues with the facet. I don't know if it was more of an undermixing issue or if it was a temperature in my environment issue. I never really figured it out. So I very quickly moved to other epoxies. Then I moved to CC DIY epoxy, and I wasn't using their Artist Cure. I actually was only solely using their facet because, again, this was so new to facets. Like, I was trying something different to see if it was a me problem or if it was an epoxy problem. And I hated the smell. Hated the smell of CC DIY facet because it not only stunk when you were mixing it, and this is all me, like, you know, it not only stunk like when I would take my respirator off to like go inside, but after the cup was dry, the cup would still stink. And I hated the smell. So then I moved over to KS Resin for their liquidy split. I can't remember. Liquidy split or lickety split? Wait, lickety split I think is an ice cream shop. I think it's liquidy split. Not me talking about it like it's an ice cream. And I loved KS Resin for a long time, but then towards the end of my time with KS Resin, it stopped working for me. And it could be just environmental changes or, you know, me changing the different things that I was doing when I was epoxying. So then when Flint Sisters came with her epoxy, I was like, buying it. And I've been with Flint Sisters epoxy ever since. So definitely haven't tried every epoxy out there. Right? I know, I like forgot about that one. I haven't tried every epoxy, but I've tried a lot of epoxies, and I've decided, you know, what works best for me. And I'm glad that I landed on something, because sometimes that can be like the first piece of discouragement when it comes to people starting to use epoxy is when it just doesn't work. You know, you know, you watch all these videos, you do all your research, and then you try it yourself and it just doesn't work the way that all of these other people are having success with. And that can be really disheartening and really disappointing for someone who is just getting into creating tumblers for themselves, or just whether it's just a hobby or looking to scale into a craft business. Like, that can be so disappointing, because you don't know how to troubleshoot. You don't know what the issues are, like what you're doing wrong. Is it the epoxy? Is it you? Is it your environment? And those are just a lot of variables for a new beginner with epoxy. That is just a lot to try and figure out. So been there with a few of those epoxies for sure. But that's what these kinds of lives are for, right? To answer those questions. All right, I'm going to do, did I say I was going to do one more question, then we'll mix epoxy? I don't even think I asked the question, did I, guys? I didn't. I just started talking, because that's what I do. Let me do a different one. Can epoxy yellow over time, and how do I prevent it? So I'm going to tell you this, and I don't care what any epoxy company says, but every epoxy known to man is going to yellow eventually. Okay. Now there are things in many epoxies now called UV inhibitors, which is like a tinted a formula that they add to the epoxy. So you might notice that one part of your epoxy has like a purple hue to it, or like a bluish tint, and that's what's called a UV inhibitor, and that's meant to counteract the yellow. Because if you look at a color wheel, and color theory tells us that purple negates yellow. Don't ask me how that works, but we've all seen the I Smile commercial and we've all seen those teeth whitening strips on TikTok. It's exactly the same thing. The purple blue tint negates the yellow, okay? Now, that doesn't mean that the epoxy isn't yellowing. It will continue to yellow, and eventually that UV inhibitor will no longer be present, and the cup will be more yellow than the tint can counteract. But all epoxy is eventually going to yellow. Where you won't notice it as much than others is you won't notice that as much as the years go on a dark cup. So a dark tumbler, you probably won't even notice that it's yellowed unless it's compared to something that's the same, like the same design or the same color. And you might go, oh, this one has like a little bit of a grungy look and this one looks much clearer. Where you're going to notice it the most is always going to be on a white cup, okay? White cups are just always going to yellow faster, and it has nothing to do with your epoxy. Just eventually epoxy will yellow over time, and it's just much more apparent over a white cup than it is over darker colors. That was me. I got discouraged and stopped until I joined. Oh, I'm so happy. Yeah, listen, ask all the questions that you ever have. I love answering questions. That's like my my favorite thing to do, is to just answer questions, especially if I know the answer. So I used to be the person to be like in the back of the class, and someone would be answering a question and I'd know that the answer wasn't right. And I'd be like, that's not the answer, you know? And I would try so hard not to raise my hand and be like, well, actually, because nobody wants to be the know-it-all in school. But I would just silently mumble it to myself. Because I was too quiet to raise my hand and answer those questions. Anyway, okay, so we are going to epoxy. So I'm just kind of cleaning up my space a little bit here. I'm going to epoxy over here with my single cup turner, which is perfect because this is the turner arm that goes to that one. Whoopsie. So first thing I'm going to do is I need to set up my turner. Oh, I forgot I have this cup on here. Oh my gosh. For anybody who was in my Facebook group a couple of weeks ago, I did at least get the piece on. I haven't epoxied this though. I've been slacking. What's new? What's new? But hopefully I'll have this. We'll probably do this next week with whatever I put on the calendar for March to finish that. All right. Is this plugged in? It is. Good. Set this here. All right, I'm going to go grab all of my things. I was the know-it-all. So I was in the back mumbling when if you didn't answer the question exactly how I would have answered it. That's funny. Okay, so I'm going to go get gloves. I'm going to go get my respirator, which means I'm probably going to have to adjust my glasses. Because I always get... that's why I needed a new one, though, too. Because this one was starting to bug me with these glasses. Oh, it's right here. I'm bugging. Okay, grab that. Grab this. All right, let me put this over here. Let me just go grab the epoxy. I'm going to put my gloves on while I handle it. Because I don't know about you guys, but I'm a messy epoxier. Like, so messy. I should probably put my, what should call it on too? Yeah, I should. We know that I'm messy. I literally just said, we know I'm messy. So I definitely should put on my apron. I've been trying to pretend that I'm not messy. And I'm disappointed every time. All right. Oh. Okay. Grab a... Dead. The epoxy's literally like the same temperature as the space right now. It's fine. Okay, it's about to get super... I don't want to say quiet, but I'm about to sound a little bit like Darth Vader, so don't be alarmed. It's just my epoxy voice, we'll call it. Okay, let me flip you guys. Okay. Let's flip this like this. Much better. Okay. So, we're going to do, this is a just glittered cup. I've already sealed it. We're going to do 30 mLs of epoxy, okay? So let me put my respirator on. Okay. Here is Darth Vader. She's here. Adjust my glasses. I always have to like basically have them almost on my eyebrow ridge. Like not even my nose. Okay, good. Okay, so for some people it makes sense to like mark it. So if you're someone who's just new, you're getting into epoxy, I recommend you like marking the lines because these actually can be kind of hard to see where the lines are. So that's kind of helpful because now I can see where 15 mLs is and where 30 mLs is for the second part. Okay, I typically like to start with part B. Typically part B is always a thinner viscosity. I don't know the science behind it, but the resin, which is part A, is always thicker. So we've got 15 mLs of part B. And now we have 15 mLs of part A. I almost said part C. Hello. A full 30 mLs, okay? So now it's time to mix. Now, mixing sticks. I didn't really talk about this today, but mixing sticks, when I started, I was using, what do you call those things? Popsicle sticks. Popsicle sticks are okay, but I will tell you that they do actually introduce a little bit of air into your epoxy because wood is porous, okay? So, and if you're like me and you're constantly epoxying things or like, you know, making a mess like I am, it might be advantageous to invest in either silicone stir sticks or these are literally coffee stirrers. And I swear by these. So now we're going to mix. So how do I know when my epoxy is fully mixed? Well, when you first start to mix your epoxy, as you can see, it looks very cloudy, like super cloudy, right? So this means that this is not mixed, right? So we want to mix this until it is clear.
and there's no ribbons or strings of epoxy that is unmixed within the epoxy. And this typically can take anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes. Again, that's all based on how warm your epoxy is, your environment, etc. Now, you should typically mix slow, and I don't mean like this slow, but just enough that you're not introducing a whole lot of bubbles. I've been doing this long enough where like I kind of have it down to a science. There will be lots of micro bubbles in my epoxy, but this is why I love Flynn Sister Supply Shop epoxy, because with its new bubble release technology, I never have to stress about those bubbles getting stuck in my layer of epoxy. The hardest part is definitely mixing. And not because it's difficult, but it's not exactly exciting. So you'll see I have a lot of micro bubbles, but I'm not worried about it with this formula. Now, a lot of my other facets that I was using before, I felt like I would have to stir so slow, because those micro bubbles would just get so stuck, even with my torch. And that was back when I was using like a kitchen torch too, so probably just not strong enough, but so good rule of thumb when you're mixing your epoxy, you want to make sure you're scraping the sides and the bottom. Okay, we don't want to be doing this right in the middle. That's not going to mix anything but the middle. So scraping the sides, make sure your popsicle stick or your stir stick is touching the bottom and scraping that bottom. And you want to mix for at least 5 minutes, okay? How crazy do I sound like Darth Vader right now? Because based on what I can hear, I sound crazy. Well, I'm really whipping this. Something some people do, I don't typically do it unless I'm doing an epoxy drip. Some people will let their epoxy sit after they've mixed it, like with your artist cure. I don't recommend this with a facet, to let those bubbles rise to the top. I'm too impatient for that, if I'm completely honest. So the only time I ever let my epoxy just like chill after I've mixed it is if I'm doing an epoxy drip. Which then I have to set a timer for anyway, because then I forget that I mix epoxy for an epoxy drip. So I can already feel that my epoxy has gotten to like my body heat temperature from my hands, which is good. This is just about mixed. I know it looks like a micro bubble disaster, but that's what I love about this formula. You guys are literally going to watch these micro bubbles disappear when I apply and torch this. Okay. It's been about 5 minutes, probably longer because I was sitting here chatting. Okay. So if your epoxy is already warm and you mixed slower than I just did, you would have something that looks like this. Should look like your epoxy in its original form. Okay. And that's when you know it's fully mixed. Okay. I mixed mine for a little bit longer because I knew I was introducing a lot of air because I was rushing. But you also want to make sure that there's no ribbons. And ribbons are kind of hard to explain, but basically they just they almost look like ripples, or like as if something is caught in the epoxy that doesn't belong because it looks cloudier than the rest of the epoxy. That's what a ribbon is. And that just means that that's unmixed epoxy. Okay. Other way. All right, we're going to apply this. Now, I don't actually know that I will need all 30 mLs. I'm someone who actually likes to do a thin coat of epoxy for all of my layers. I would rather build layers at a thin ratio than lob it on and run into a potential of having micro bubbles in those thicker coats of epoxy. Especially over the glitter. I like to do a thinner coat because I really want that epoxy to like settle in and keep that glitter stuck. Okay. A little bit more. I still got to do the butt. All right, now let's do the bottom. A little extra love on this bottom rim, because this and the top is always where you're gonna have rough surfaces when you're done with your epoxy coat, because it's just a little harder to sit in those sections, you know? Okay. We're looking pretty good. I'm literally gonna have like a smidgen of epoxy left. Look at that. I actually needed to use more, probably because this is a bit chunkier. A finer glue definitely would not have needed all 30. Okay. You look pretty good. This is where I spend the most time. I watch back every once in a while, like when I'm filming tutorials, and I will like watch back my clips of epoxying. Even at 2x speed, I'm like, girl, you really spend a lot of time on one cup. And I really do. But I want to make sure it's super smooth, you know? Okay. That's good. I need to stop touching it. All right. I have a smidgen. This is not enough for me to save, so this I will throw away because I don't have a mold ready tonight. But you could have poured that into a mold of your choice. Then we will take a paper towel and we're going to clean off our mixing stick with some alcohol. That way I can put that away. So that's going to go in the garbage. I'm going to take off my other glove and then I'm going to go get my torch. So this is the torch I use. It is the Burnzomatic. I got this top from, I think, Amazon. And then these you can actually buy at Walmart. So we're going to turn the switch. Turn. And we're just going to go back and forth. Okay? You don't want to overheat any one area too long, because you can burn your epoxy. So quick swipes. Just trying to make sure that I didn't miss any sections. Okay. I think that looks good. Now, in the event that I maybe come back after a few minutes and I feel like there's still bubbles present, I can torch again, but I don't want to over torch because if I add too much heat to this, then all that epoxy that I just put on is going to just end up on my catch paper, which I don't want. So that looks pretty good. So this is off. I can go put this away. And yeah, that is it. So, questions, thoughts, all of the things while I still have my respirator on before I go inside. So, I'll probably come out and check this in like 20 minutes just to make sure I don't have any other bubbles that popped up that I didn't see the first time. But other than that, this is good to go. So this is artist care, so I won't be able to touch this cup until tomorrow. So I'm gonna let this spin overnight. I do let my tumblers spin overnight. I have never had an issue, okay, but I know some people who don't prefer to do that. I have one of those, what do you call those strips that automatically turn off when there's an issue. So I don't typically worry about them, but none of my tumblers are plugged directly into a wall on purpose. So, all right, any last minute questions for me? Okay, well, I'm going to hop off. If you're in my Facebook group, I will have a new calendar up for March, probably on Sunday. We are already at the 3-month part of the year, so we will be getting ready to do our quarterly reset notebooks or clipboards, whatever you choose to do. That will be towards the end of the month because obviously that will be for April, May, and June. But yeah, so if you have any questions or you're watching this back on the replay, feel free to leave any comments or questions, and I will gladly answer your question in either a video or in the comment section. All right, guys. I will see you guys on Sunday for a new video. I promise I'm really trying hard to get my life together this week. So new video. It is going to be a beginner video. So I'll see you guys on Sunday at like 2:30. I'll be sitting at a basketball game at the same time for that video premiere. And otherwise, I'll let you guys know when I'm live again here on YouTube after that. But have a wonderful weekend. Great night. Go check out my website for new bundles, and I'll see you guys soon. Bye.